So what are wait stats? So they are when anytime anything within SQL Server is waiting for something, it'll get given a wait stat. That can be a query waiting for either a resource in regards to CPU memory. It can be a query waiting for a data object, so a data page, a table, what have you. It can be a SQL Server internal process waiting for something. For example, you have in an availability group, you can have threads that are just sat there waiting to synchronize data across the secondary nodes. Because of that, not all wait stats are bad. Some wait stats just happen. But we'll have a look at what these things are and what they mean for you guys. So just a couple of things to remember. They are cumulative. They are usually in seconds, depending on what you're looking at, on milliseconds. But they're cumulative since the last time the DMVs were cleared, which is usually last server restart. But there are a couple of other things that can do it. But usually it's since your last restart. And we could use them to diagnose quite a lot of things within a SQL Server. So let's go through and have a look at some things. So to get your wait stats, there is a very nice little DMV called DMOS wait stats. It will give you a list. It's worth noting, I pulled this today off a SQL Server 2022 instance, and there were 1,376 wait stats on this table. I work with wait stats every day, and I was chatting with Kyle on our team earlier. I'm pretty sure I could only, off the top of my head, define about 20 of them for you. Because of that, this SQL skills library here is great. If you Google a wait stat, chances are SQL skills will be at the top. And it's a list of 95% of wait stats. Some new ones might not yet be on there when a new version of SQL Server is released. But it's great. It'll tell you for most of them whether it's a benign wait, whether it's problematic, when it's often seen, and for most of them, it tells you how to fix it, or gives you pointers at least. In this demo, I will be using SPWho is active later on in this presentation. Sorry, not this demo. SPWho is active, for those who haven't used it, is a beefed up version of SPWho 2 and give you a bunch of information. It will tell you the process ID. It will give you the T-SQL that's been running most of the time. But the reason it's relevant for this is because it will give you any wait stats that query is waiting on right now. So we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. SP Blitz first is very similar. You run that first on a server, it will tell you your current wait stats as one of its outputs. So you can go through and have a look at those. Quite a lot of people will have queries they've written themselves to pull out wait stats exactly how they like, but there's plenty of examples out there. So I won't go through all of those, but if you Google SQL Server wait stat query, you'll find a ton of them. Just find something that you like. So we'll go through a list of common wait types for now. So these are the ones that we tend to see the most, the problematic ones we tend to see the most. So any wait stats starting with LCK is a lock wait. Now this will be on usually a data page. It could be a key lock, it can be a page, it could be a table. But that will be something has locked a data page. I'm gonna refer to it as data page. It could be more than that, but something has locked a data page, and then something else is having to wait for access to that data page. So an example of that could be you've got an update query that's updating a table. You have a read query that comes along to try and read the data. The query is currently the data's being modified, so it's locked. If this is all assuming we're in the default isolation level. So as long as we're not in something like recommitted snapshot isolation, that changes this behavior. But assuming we're in default, an update query will block any other query. So reads or other update queries, you'll see them as locked. You can also get there are different letters, and we'll go through that. But you can get LCK MS locks, for example. So that's a shared lock. So a read query will read data from a table. It'll take a shared lock, and that means that other queries can read that data, but no other query can modify that data while it's being read. So it's for data consistency. Later on, remember that we'll go through and I'll show you some examples. CX waits, see it's back at CX consumer. All this means is that parallelism is happening in your server. And what that means is you have parallelism settings, which is how big a query needs to be, so you cast threshold for parallelism, and then how parallel it can go, your maximum degree of parallelism. So let's say a query goes, it's a large query, it has a maxed up of 4. It could use 4 CPU cores at once. When CS packet waits happen is when you've split your workload across 4 threads, they are processing, and if one completes before the other ones, then it has a CX packet wait, which means it's just waiting for the other threads to finish before the data gets recombined and we carry on with the process. So you will, unless you're running single thread, you will see CX packet waits. It's not a problem unless they're excessive. If you consider them, if it's by far away your highest wait stat, for example, you may want to check things like your parallelism settings. Make sure you're not at the defaults of cost threshold of 5 and maxed up of 0, which is crazy talk. Although I believe later versions of SQL Server may set that correctly for you. So that's CX. Async network I/O is a fun one. We see this on quite a lot of servers. And what this means is that SQL Server has finished processing a query. So an application has requested SQL Server run a query. SQL's done it, got the results set, and it's waiting to send that data back to the application. The most common cause of this is post-processing of data rows. So if you've got your .NET app or whatever, it requests the data. And what you're going to want to do is you want to verify that data when you receive it back. So you're going to run a little check against it. Either check that it's within a range, check it against another table. The reason that's a problem is because the .NET app will work on a row-by-row basis. So it will receive one row of data back, validate it, accept the next row, validate it. SQL Server works as sets, so it will do the whole query and try and push it. And the async network I/O will happen when SQL's trying to push the entire query and the application is only accepting a row at a time. So that's the most common cause of async network I/O. And like I say, we do see that a fair amount on when we do a health check on a new customer. I'll show you some examples. Latch waits, anything latch EX usually, means that there's a non-page, so a non-data structure lock. So somebody's locking the structure of a table, and somebody else is trying to either read the structure or modify the structure. Page latch is specifically not the structure of a table, but the page data structure. It gets complicated, but you'll often see those together, latch and page latch. And then something like write log, we see quite a lot. Not necessarily an issue, but this is when data's modified, you need to harden it to the transaction log until your next log backup happens. If for any reason there's contention on that drive, it may be that you're doing extremely large like reporting workloads that are trying to write a lot of data at once to the log file, or whether maybe your log file isn't on good disks. Maybe the disks just aren't performing well. Then you'll see write log where your delay is trying to write to the transaction log. There are a couple of scary wait types that if you see them are problematic. So they're known as poison waits, which means that if you see these are bad. These aren't exclusive, but these are the 5 most common ones we see. So if you see SOS scheduler yield wait, that means that queries are trying to get hold of a CPU scheduler so that they can execute. They can go ahead and do what they want, but there aren't any available, so they have to wait. And what happens with a scheduler is then it is constantly switching between all of these processes that are waiting for CPU, and you'll see scheduler yield. I'm sure you can imagine why that's a problem. So it means you've just got no CPU left. You haven't got enough. Resource semaphore is the same thing, but for memory. So when a query, if it needs to do any sort of operation where it stores data in memory, you'll see resource semaphore. A resource semaphore query compile is also memory pressure, but you can't even create a query plan for that query. For the resource semaphore, often what this is you either have multiple or one huge query that are taking a very large memory grant. So the way that memory grants work within queries. And if you look at an execution plan, you'll be able to find the memory grant. But SQL, when it compiles a query and produces an execution plan, it say, I think this query needs X amount of memory to run. It might be 100 meg. It might be 100 gig. And when that begins running, SQL Server will go, oh, you need, if it's 100 gig, you need 100 gig of memory to run. So it'll allocate 100 gig of memory to that query. Now, if you've only got 60 gig on your server, it's going to throw everything else out of memory and nothing else. Is going to give it as much as it can and nothing else can run. Nothing else can get hold of that memory. It might be, you might have 500 gig, but if you've got 6 instances of this query running, even if they don't use all the memory, they get it granted. And that's when you start seeing memory pressure usually. It's usually runaway queries with a high memory grant. And I won't go into too much depth about fixing those, but it's usually extremely large queries, not very optimized, and bad statistics, if you have that in your environment. Right. Thread pool. So it's similar to scheduler yield, but there are a certain amount of worker threads within SQL Server. Each server will have its own number. And an open process, an open SPID, will use 1 or potentially 2 of those, depending on how you're connecting. If you're connected through Management Studio, you'll use 2, because one's for Management Studio, one's for the application, one's for the query. Chances are you probably have a couple of thousand worker threads. So if you're seeing thread pool, you've got a lot of processes running on your server, and other queries can't get hold of a worker thread to run. So again, CPU pressure, but that's more of a number of processes running rather than large processes running using a lot of CPU. The last one we'll talk about here is CMEM thread. This again it's another CPU pressure. We see this mostly when default parallelism is used. So every query is going parallel, every query is trying to use multi-threads, and it's one of those sort of contentions. So if you spend any time looking at wait stats, you will learn which ones in your environment are most common, which ones are problematic, and then we can use that information to go and make our SQL Server more reliable, make it perform better.